I always had a fascination with the woods. Growing up in a small town nestled amidst towering trees, the forest was an integral part of my childhood. I spent countless hours exploring its depths, marveling at its beauty, and feeling the exhilarating rush of being surrounded by nature's embrace. But my love for the woods was soon to be tested in ways I never imagined. It was a crisp autumn evening when I decided to embark on my solo camping trip. The leaves had already begun to turn shades of fiery red and golden yellow, painting the forest in a mesmerizing tapestry of colors. I chose a secluded spot deep within the woods, far away from the prying eyes of civilization. It was a place untouched by human presence, where the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a distant owl. As I set up my tent and lit a crackling fire, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. It was a subtle sensation at first, like the prickling of hairs on the back of my neck. I brushed it off as mere paranoia, chalking it up to the eerie atmosphere of the forest at night. Night fell like a thick blanket over the woods, enveloping everything in darkness. I sat by the fire, mesmerized by the dancing flames, trying to shake off the growing unease gnawing at the edges of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the feeling of being watched persisted, like unseen eyes peering out from the shadows. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to weigh heavily on my eyelids. I decided to retire to my tent, hoping that sleep would bring respite from the creeping sense of dread that had settled over me. But as I lay there in the darkness, listening to the symphony of nocturnal sounds outside, sleep eluded me. That's when I heard it, a faint rustling coming from the woods beyond my tent. My heart hammered in my chest as I strained my ears to catch any movement amidst the silence of the night. But the rustling soon ceased, swallowed by the oppressive stillness of the forest. I tried to convince myself that it was just an animal, perhaps a curious raccoon or a deer passing through the woods. But deep down, I knew that it was something more sinister, something lurking in the darkness just beyond the reach of my campfire's glow. As the night wore on, the feeling of being watched intensified, like an invisible presence closing in around me. I huddled closer to the warmth of the fire, clutching my flashlight like a talisman against the encroaching darkness. And then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard it, a low, guttural growl emanating from the shadows beyond my tent. My blood turned to ice as fear gripped me in its icy claws. I knew then that I was not alone in the woods, that something malevolent was stalking me in the darkness. Terrified, I fumbled for my phone, desperate for some semblance of connection to the outside world. But to my horror, there was no signal, no lifeline to call for help. I was utterly alone, at the mercy of whatever lurked in the depths of the forest. With trembling hands, I unzipped the flap of my tent, shining my flashlight into the darkness beyond. What I saw sent a chill down my spine, a pair of glowing eyes shimmering like embers in the night, fixed upon me with an unnerving intensity. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized the true horror of my situation. I was being hunted, stalked by some unknown creature that lurked in the shadows of the woods. And as the night wore on, I knew that my chances of survival grew slimmer with each passing moment. But despite the overwhelming fear that threatened to consume me, I refused to surrender to despair. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I resolved to fight for my life. to defy the darkness that sought to swallow me whole. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, I emerged from my tent, battered but unbroken. The creature that had haunted my nightmares had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of its sinister presence. I packed up my campsite in record time, eager to put as much distance between myself and the horrors of the night as possible. And as I made my way back to civilization, I vowed never to return to those cursed woods again, haunted by the memories of the darkness that lurked within. But deep down, I knew that the shadows of the woods would follow me wherever I went, a reminder of the terrifying ordeal that had tested my courage and resilience in the face of unspeakable horror. And though I may have escaped with my life intact, the scars of that fateful night would remain etched upon my soul forevermore. In the heart of the Pacific Northwest, nestled beneath a canopy of towering pines and surrounded by an eerie silence, lay the Whispering Woods. This sprawling forest was notorious for its mysterious disappearances, whispered legends, and tales of the supernatural. It was in this forbidding wilderness that I, Alex Turner, decided to embark on a solo camping trip. The decision to venture into the Whispering Woods alone was fueled by a desire for adventure, a longing to escape the cacophony of city life, and a deep-rooted fascination with the unknown. Armed with a backpack filled with essentials and a sense of trepidation, I set out on my journey. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers, reaching out to ensnare unwary travelers. Despite the beauty of my surroundings, a sense of unease began to gnaw at the edges of my consciousness. Night fell swiftly, casting the forest into darkness, punctuated only by the feeble glow of my campfire. The crackling flames provided little comfort against the vast expanse of shadows that seemed to press in from all sides. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down my spine as I huddled closer to the dwindling warmth of the fire. As I lay in my tent, the darkness seemed to thicken, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild, that there was nothing to fear in the solitude of the woods. But deep down, I knew that something was lurking in the shadows, something ancient and malevolent. It was then that I heard it, a soft whispering sound carried on the breeze. At first, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my mind. But as the whispers grew louder, I realized that they were coming from somewhere deep within the forest. They were faint and indistinct, like the murmurs of a forgotten language spoken by unseen lips. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and fear, I ventured out into the darkness, following the sound of the whispers as they led me deeper into the heart of the woods. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting and writhing like the tendrils. I found myself standing in a clearing, bathed in moonlight, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to watch me with malevolent intent. It was then that I saw her, a figure shrouded in darkness, standing at the edge of the clearing. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, piercing through the darkness like twin stars in the night sky. I tried to speak, to ask her who she was and why she had led me here, but my voice caught in my throat, choked off by a primal fear that gripped me to the core. Without warning, the figure stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful as she glided across the forest floor. Each step seemed to reverberate through the earth, sending tremors coursing through my body as I stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. As she drew closer, I could see that her features were twisted and distorted, as if she were wearing a mask crafted from nightmares. Her skin was pale and gaunt, stretched taut over the bones of her face, and her lips were pulled back in a grotesque grin that revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. I wanted to run, to flee from this nightmarish apparition and never look back, but something held me in place, a primal instinct that told me to stand my ground and face whatever horrors awaited me in the darkness. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, she was upon me, her cold, clammy hands reaching out to grasp me in a vice-like grip. I struggled against her, but it was like fighting against a force of nature, inexorable and unstoppable. As she drew me closer, her lips brushed against my ear, whispering words that chilled me to the bone. They were words of ancient power and forbidden knowledge, words that promised untold horrors if only I would listen. And listen I did, unable to tear myself away from the hypnotic cadence of her voice as she spoke of things beyond human comprehension, of a world hidden beneath the surface of reality where nightmares reign supreme. In that moment, I knew that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could ever have imagined, something that lurked in the depths of the Whispering Woods, waiting to ensnare unwary travelers in its web of darkness. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the figure released me from her grasp, disappearing into the shadows, as if she had never been there. I stumbled back to my campsite, shaken and disoriented, unsure of what had just transpired. But one thing was certain: I would never look at the Whispering Woods in the same way again, for in those ancient depths, something stirred, something that hungered for the souls of the living, something that would stop at nothing to claim its prize. And as I packed up my belongings and fled from that accursed place, I knew that I had escaped with my life, but at what cost, I dared not imagine. I've always been drawn to the mystery of the woods, the whispering leaves, the rustle of unseen creatures, the eerie glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. It's as if the forest holds secrets beyond our comprehension. So, when I stumbled upon the tale of the abandoned campsite deep within the heart of the forest, I knew I had to see it for myself. The forest in question was known as Ravenwood, named after the countless crows that nested in its ancient trees. It was a vast expanse of wilderness, untouched by civilization, for miles around. Rumors swirled about the eerie happenings within its depths, strange lights flickering between the trees, unearthly cries echoing in the night, and whispers of long-forgotten rituals performed by those who dared to venture too far into its embrace. Despite the warnings of locals and the unsettling stories that surrounded Ravenwood, I couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Armed with nothing but a tent, some supplies, and my own curiosity, I set out on a solo camping trip into the heart of the forest. As I ventured deeper into Ravenwood, the familiar sights and sounds of civilization faded away, replaced by the cacophony of nature in its purest form. The towering trees seemed to loom overhead, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers grasping at the sky. The forest floor was carpeted with a thick layer of decaying leaves, muffling the sound of my footsteps as I pressed onward. As night fell, I found myself surrounded by an impenetrable darkness, broken only by the feeble beam of my flashlight. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting vegetation, and a sense of unease settled over me like a shroud. Finally, after what felt like hours of trudging through the darkness, I stumbled upon the abandoned campsite I had heard so much about. It was nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering trees, the remnants of a long-forgotten fire pit smoldering at its center. Tattered tents sagged under the weight of years of neglect, their fabric torn and frayed by the ravages of time. Despite the dilapidated state of the campsite, there was something strangely alluring about it, as if it held the key to unlocking the mysteries of Ravenwood itself. With a sense of trepidation, I set up my own tent on the edge of the clearing, determined to spend the night amidst the shadows of the forest. As darkness enveloped the campsite, I huddled inside my tent, the faint glow of my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the canvas walls. The forest seemed to come alive around me, the rustle of leaves and the creaking of branches echoing through the night like ghostly whispers. As I lay there, listening to the symphony of the forest, a sense of foreboding washed over me. It was as if unseen eyes were watching me from the shadows, their gaze filled with a malevolent intent. I tried to shake off the feeling, chalking it up to my overactive imagination, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence of the night, sending shivers down my spine. It was a sound unlike anything I had ever heard before, primal, guttural, filled with unbridled terror. Without thinking, I leaped to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest as I fumbled for my flashlight. As I stumbled out of my tent, I was greeted by a scene of utter chaos. The clearing was bathed in an eerie red glow, the source of which I couldn't discern. Shadows danced wildly across the forest floor, twisting and contorting in the flickering light. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, its form shrouded in darkness. It was tall and gaunt, with long, spindly limbs that seemed to bend and twist in unnatural ways. Its eyes gleamed like orbs of fire in the darkness, fixed on me with a predatory intensity that sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to run, to flee from the nightmare unfolding before me, but my legs refused to move. I was rooted to the spot, transfixed by the horror that stood before me. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, the figure lunged forward, its movement swift and silent as a shadow. I stumbled backwards, my heart hammering in my chest as I desperately tried to evade its grasp. But it was no use. In an instant, the creature was upon me, its icy fingers closing around my throat with a vice-like grip. I gasped for air, clawing desperately at its hands as darkness closed in around me. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The creature released its hold on me, disappearing back into the depths of the forest, as if it had never been there at all. I lay there gasping for breath, my mind reeling from the sheer terror of what had just transpired. As dawn broke over the horizon, I stumbled out of the clearing, my body battered and bruised, but alive. I fled Ravenwood, vowing never to return to its cursed depths again. But the memory of that night will haunt me forever, a reminder of the darkness that lurks within the heart of the forest, and the horrors that await those who dare to seek it out.